Good morning, Mr. Lilly.
Good morning, Ms. Dias.
Just
a moment. We'll let everybody get connected here. And Ms. Dias, is it Dias or Diaz? I want to make sure I say it right.
it's dice, like roll the dice.
Okay, thank you. And if I've been saying it wrong, I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
I encounter a lot of names in this business and I try my best, but I don't always do well.
It's
All right.
misspelled as often as it's mispronounced. So, okay.
Yeah, well, my name gets misspelled too. That's sometimes wrong numbers of L's.
Yeah.
All right. It looks like just one moment here for everybody to get connected. All right, I guess we can go ahead and get started. I don't see Mr. Sanders. I see a tile, but no face. I hope you're there, Mr. Sanders.
I apologize, Mr. Lilly. For some reason, I'm having some video problems this morning, but
Okay.
I am here. Thank you.
All right, well, you can obviously hear me and I can hear you, so we will proceed and I hope you can get your video fixed, but it's no problem if you can't. All right, so good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Lilly, presiding hearing officer of the State Water Resources Control Board's Administrative Hearings Office. Today is April 26, 2022. It's just after 9 a.m. And this is a continuation of the hearing on the prosecution team's draft cease and desist order against Blue Triton Brands, Inc. Looks like all the appearances are the same as they were on previous days, so I'm not going to ask for new appearances. And I believe, unless anybody has anything else they need to talk about this morning, we can get started with Mr. Lowe's testimony. Mr. Lowe, you are still under the oath you previously took. We marked your sur-rebuttal testimony as Exhibit Low 3, and as necessary, we can put that up on the screen. I did receive your email this morning, which you sent. I don't know if you sent it to everybody else or just to the AHO, but it's very short, and I'll just read it because it says that you plan to summarize your testimony in 15 minutes, and your topic areas are to correct a couple of exhibit citations, a short discussion regarding the USFS point of diversion and Nichols' conclusions, and a brief discussion regarding recent hydrological conditions compared to modern times and the basis for Mr. Nichols' claims. And we will make a PDF file of your email and add it to the administrative record. So with that, Mr. Lowe, why don't you go ahead with your summary? As I mentioned yesterday, I have read your entire written sur-rebuttal testimony, which is 17 pages long, and it's really quite clear, and I understand it well. But if you want to summarize a couple of the key points, particularly matters that were not covered in your testimony for a Story of Stuff project yesterday, that's fine. So why don't you go ahead and go off mute so we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lilly.
Yes. Now we can hear you fine.
So let's put up my low 3 testimony.
All right, Ms. Mullen, please post exhibit low 3. And we have that on the screen, and we will make it full screen size momentarily. So go ahead.
Okay. So let's go ahead to Nichols number 78, which is on my page 4. I think it's probably page 4
Yes, at the bottom of page 4, there is a paragraph, a numbered paragraph 78. So we'll scroll down to the bottom of page 4 where 78 starts and it carries over onto the next page. So go ahead.
Right. So I've written a rebuttal there. I just wanted to add a reference on the rebuttal about halfway down through. Go to the next page, please.
Okay, yeah, 78 is a quote from Mr. Nichols' written rebuttal testimony, and then your rebuttal is here. So tell us where you want us to go to.
So on the about the middle of the paragraph on rebuttal, it says BTB 7.
Okay.
In BTB 7, that's BTB 7 dash page 33, first and second paragraph.
Okay. We don't need to change the written exhibit, but this is noted for the record.
Yes, I thought you might want to look at it because I hadn't given you a good enough reference to get to it easily.
All right, I've made a note.
Because BTB 7 is so large. Okay, and then I just wanted to kind of summarize something that I talked about yesterday, but I didn't get to clearly describe it, is Michelle Biermar, Forest Service hydrogeologist, said that the Forest Service spring flow is potentially affected by the diversion of spring 2. So I just wanted to make that clear that that is something that Ms. Biermar felt was possible, and that hasn't been tested. There was no way to really shut in spring 2 and do testing to see if it has affected the Forest Service spring. And the fact that it's so much larger and had effect even on number 8, or at least had a relationship to number 8, shows that number 2 was so massive that it could be having effects on the whole aquifer in that area. So it could have affected Forest Service spring. And the reference for that is SOS 26-26, last paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, then let's go ahead and go to page 6.
Okay, we'll scroll on to page 6. And tell us where you want us to go to.
Right above the 116.
Okay, so Mrs. Smolin, just scroll down where it says, we'll have it where it starts with rebuttal. You can scroll down a little bit more right there. Bingo. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So that last paragraph in my rebuttal refers to the fact that Blue Triton's predecessors and Mr. Rowe weren't just looking at the evapotranspiration to figure out why there was no water, as Mr. Nichols indicates. They were actually trying to prove that they could take water from the top, dry up the alders, and not have any adverse effect on the downstream water users. So I have the reference for that, which is SOS 52. And it was done in September of 1930 by Mr. Rowe. Okay.
All right, I've made a note of that.
Okay, let's go to number 123, please.
Okay, let me check and I'll help. Small. It looks like that's on page 9.
On page 9, I'm sorry.
That's fine. So, and again, the 123 is a quote from Mr. Nichols' testimony, and then your rebuttal follows that near the bottom of the page. So go ahead.
Right. Mr. Nichols in 123 right there off the bat there refers to two things that show how Upper Strawberry Creek is intermittent and that it's similar to what it is today. So those two things that he shows, I'd like to look at SOS 024. We haven't looked at that in any previous stuff in the last day or so. So I don't think it's repetitive. I think it's new stuff. SOS 024.
Okay, you've cited it here, so we'll go ahead and display that.
Okay.
And you
Mr.
can
Nichols,
briefly, you want us to display SOS 24?
yes, please.
All right, and I'll let you
Mr.
briefly summarize that. This is getting a little bit beyond summarizing your testimony, but I'll give you a little leeway here to basically briefly summarize SOS 24 since it is cited in your testimony.
And Mr. Lilly, I would like to object for the record on that point because it sounds like what he's seeking to do is provide new testimony regarding SOS 24, which he cited in the quote of Mr. Nichols' testimony. And thus far, it looks like what we're doing is just expanding on his written testimony. And this is supposed to be a summary.
Right. Well, that's why I said the objection's overruled. I'm going to allow him to briefly make this point. But yes, Mr. Lowe, this is getting beyond your written testimony. So just if you can just in a couple of sentences say what your point is, and we will scroll to the appropriate part of SOS 24.
Okay, let's scroll down, please. To the map. There's a map down below. This was when they were setting up the study and where they were going to do their monitoring. And this is a separate report that was submitted by Haley and Aldrich.
Okay, do you know what page we're going to? Maybe we're getting there.
We're almost there. I'm sorry, I didn't write the page number. There we go. So can we scroll out? There we go. Okay, all right, a little more, scroll out just a little more. This is interesting. That's good right there. And then we can move down the drainage. This is very, very interesting. And this is what they found when they initially set up the studies in 2016. And it's the first time we've actually seen how they did it and where they set up their points. These blue lines on here are where they actually found surface water, which is very interesting. This was May and June of 2016. So these areas that had surface water are the areas where they decided they would monitor. There's two things that are, or two or three things here that are really important. We don't see any water coming from tunnel 2 or from tunnel 3. Those are dry channels now. There's a little bit of water coming from the 1-8 complex, but it's very minor. It's half a gallon a minute. Very, very minor, just barely noticeable. If you look across, look to the block, the furthest block on the left, and this is real interesting. That blue that you see below that furthest block to the left, that blue line that you see there on that little tributary is a very small tributary that comes in that's not affected by tunnel 3, tunnel 1, and tunnel 2. It's not affected because it's away from that, way away from that. And yet it shows flows, current flows that are greater than 1 gallon per minute, which none of those other areas had greater than 1 gallon a minute. And they had flows, number 1 had flows about 10, number 3 had flows about 15, number 2 had flows of 60, and the confluence had flows of over 100. I mean, and that's, so anyway, that's all I wanted to show here is how they set it up and how little water there is now compared to what it was. So to me,
okay, let's go ahead. Thank you for that brief summary. Let's go back to your testimony now, SOS 3.
Okay, all right.
And tell us what page you would like to go to.
Okay. Let's go to number 125, please. Which is on
that would be on page, looks like page 10.
Yes. So in number 125, Mr. Nichols was trying to show how things are similar today to what they were historically. And part of what he's showing here is that there was high flows, 180 gallons per minute in 125 right in the middle at one of the monitoring locations. And flow 4 ranged between 0 and 175 gallons per minute. Well, what he's done here is he's taken the highest flows measured during the whole 5 years that we've been monitoring and used that to compare and draw some kind of similarity to what Rowe was measuring. But he doesn't say how much different the years were. This was after wet years. This was during a summer storm. Anyway, so I just wanted to point that out again on that. Okay, so let's go. I think the rest of it, Mr. Lilly, I think my testimony speaks for itself. And that's all I have to say this morning. Thank you.
Okay, and I will say, Mr. Lowe, I appreciate the fact that you organized your written testimony by listing Mr. Nichols, actually quoting Mr. Nichols' paragraph, and then stating your rebuttal. That's exactly, that made it very clear exactly what you were rebutting. So there wasn't much question about that. So, and it certainly makes it a lot easier for me to follow as well. Okay, so with that, I guess I didn't do the preliminary. Let's just, to make sure we have it in the record, is Exhibit Low 3, in fact, your written sur-rebuttal testimony for this hearing?
Yes, with the corrections that I made this morning.
All right, thank you. And with that, then, does anybody want to ask Mr. Lowe cross-examination questions? Please raise your hand, either your real hand or your electronic hand if you want to. I am not seeing any hands. Okay, and that's fine. And I don't have any questions either. Well, actually, let me just check. I'm going to check my notes. I don't think I had anything down, but let me just check, Mr. Lowe, just a minute. No. All right. So, Mr. Lowe, I assume you would like to offer Exhibit Low 3 into evidence?
Yes.
Are there any objections to Exhibit Low 3 being admitted into evidence? All right. Hearing none, Exhibit Low 3 will be admitted into evidence. And thank you, Mr. Lowe. That will complete your sur-rebuttal testimony. And we will move on to Ms. Fry. Let me just get my papers here.
Thank you.
Okay. So for Ms. Fry, she submitted for sur-rebuttal exhibits FR 152 through FR 159. And then my staff numbered what was called Declaration of Amanda Fry, parentheses, sur-rebuttal, close parentheses. We labeled that as FR 160. Just because we like to have all the documents labeled as exhibits for reference purposes. And then the updated spreadsheet where she provided the authentication for her exhibits, we labeled as exhibit FR 161. So good morning, Ms. Fry.
Good morning.
Just by way of preliminaries, is what we have labeled Exhibit FR 160, in fact, your sur-rebuttal testimony for this hearing?
Yes, yes, it is.
All right, and then the updated spreadsheet that we've labeled FR 161, does that in fact provide the authentications you have, does that state the authentications you have provided for your exhibits?
Yes.
All right. So as I said with Mr. Lowe, I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera, I'm trying to read papers and talk at the same time here. I have carefully read your rebuttal testimony, which is, or sur-rebuttal testimony. So it's not necessary for you to summarize it, although I will allow you to briefly summarize it. I did notice one typographical error that you might want to correct. So Ms. Mullen, if we can put up Exhibit FR 160 and move to page 7, I would appreciate it. And just scroll down to the middle of paragraph 9. Okay, so right there and about the middle, Ms. Fry, do you see the sentence that begins, Mr. Nichols testified during cross-examination by Ms. Fry that he did? Do you see that line?
Oh, it should be did not. Yes.
Right. Okay, so I thought there was supposed to be a nod in there.
Thank you very much.
It's a fairly important distinction, so I thought
That is. Thank you.
All right. So with that, I will give you a few minutes, maximum of 15, although it probably will not take that long. If you want to summarize the key points in your testimony, and as necessary, we can put up, Exhibit FR 160. So please go ahead.
I think most of it is self-explanatory, and a lot of I went over before. So I'm just going to highlight several points out of 5 and 6. I'd like to put up FR 159, please.
All right, let's put up FR 159. We have FR 159, page 1 posted now, and it's a 2-page exhibit.
Right, it's 2 pages.
Mr. Lilly, excuse me for a moment, please. I'd like to object because I'm not sure where this is in the testimony. I had reviewed the testimony and didn't see anything in there about these photographs.
It's number 6.
So let's just double check here.
And it's in the footnote 21.
Yeah, so
And 23.
I do see that on page 5 in paragraph 6 of Exhibit FR 160, there are discussions of the photos in Exhibit FR 159. So I think she has referenced this exhibit in her testimony. So with that, Ms. Fry, you may go ahead and summarize the key points you would like to make regarding these photos.
There have been claims made by Mr. Nichols that BTB collection systems are not from known channels. And Strawberry Creek is a known channel. And since you weren't there probably to see it in this state, I took these pictures April 4th to try to give a tour. It's very hard to show the channel. It's very obvious when you're there. So number 1 starts at the U.S. Forest Service Headwater Spring, Highway Spring, application number 6108. And I tried to show going down channel from that. And you can see the channel, even though it's basically dry, there is a channel. And so these photos travel down from the Headwater Spring, 3's continuing downstream from the Headwater Spring, 4 continue going downstream, 7, 8 continuing downstream. It's very dry here. Let's go to the next page.
Okay, we'll go to page 2 of FR 159.
and continuing downstream. And 10, photo 10 is at spring box 1. You can see that right next to the channel. Continuing on, 11 is downstream stream from spring box 1, and 12. So this is a view from headwater spring of the channel on down. Let's go to FR 149.
So just before you do, Ms. Fry, I do remember the pipe crossing the channel that's shown in photos 10 and 11, but is photo 12 just looking downstream a little bit further?
It's looking downstream a little further, right?
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And then we'll go to,
So is it still above spring 4 then?
yes, this is still above spring 4.
All right.
And I think if we go to FR 149, we'll sort of complete the picture.
Okay, let's post FR 149. Okay, what page would you like us to go to?
Okay, so we'll just start scrolling down through here. So again, we're starting at the headwater spring. Let's scroll on down. That we already saw the highway spring 6108. And keep scrolling down. This is from the headwater spring. The second picture is a point of diversion pipe that's all taped off. So we've seen this basic view before, starting at the top, keep going down.
All right, we'll scroll down.
We'll just keep scrolling. And we've seen, okay, here we're right at the spring box, right? We saw this, right? This is spring box 1. And okay, keep scrolling down.
All right, let's go.
We've already visited this in this other picture. Okay, and here we are at below spring box 1 and this is at the vault of spring 1-8. Okay,
all right.
And we keep scrolling down.
I think you mean the vault for 1A and 8.
1A and 8, right.
Go ahead.
Okay, and here's the discharge pipe. So looking down channel from vault 1-8, and that's the discharge pipe, and you can clearly see the spring channel there. Okay, let's scroll down a little more. And at this photo, we're looking up at the vault 1-8 upstream. So we've connected sort of this, and this is downstream from 1-8 before spring 4. Okay, let's keep going down. Oh, this is 2. Let's come back to this page. Let's keep going down to spring 4. Let's find spring 4 on this.
Okay, go ahead and scroll down, please.
Down a little more. We'll come back to 2.
If we can. Is there more on this exhibit? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there is more. And so we'll have to go scroll one more to spring 4. And I'll come back to those. Okay, so here's spring 4, and this is down channel of the spring vault 1-8. Okay, you can scroll down a little more. You can still see this. And then, okay, and then you can see how the channel continues on downstream from spring 4, and it flows on down. And let's go up to, so I think clearly we see here the channel. Now, each of the spring channels, let's go up to 2.
Okay, one more page up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so here's spring 2. So spring 2 is west of the headwater spring and that main channel. And so you can see that this, and Rosefield notes confirm that this also used to stream into spring 4 and then fed into Strawberry Creek. So let's go down to Spring 3.
Okay. Just scroll down one page, please.
Mhm. And this is Spring Brox 3. Let's scroll down a little more. Spring Vault. And we
Okay.
can see this, how this is. Okay, the first picture is looking upstream from the channel, and then with the pipeline view downstream, you can see the channel that flowed downstream. Okay,
Can I just interrupt again? I'd like to object for the record. This is far beyond what's detailed in paragraph 6 of the written testimony.
The objection is overruled. I think paragraph 6 does talk about this, and it's a little hard to write out everything to describe photos. So I'm going to give Ms. Fry some leeway to explain as she is the photos. And she did make the point that during our site visit, most of this was covered by snow. So I think this is important additional testimony to illustrate it, and frankly is rebuttal to Mr. Nichols' testimony. So I'm going to overrule the objection and allow this description. I think, Ms. Fry, you're probably almost done with the summary. Is that correct?
That's
To that end, though, I'm sorry, Mr. Lilly. To that end, I'd also like, just for the record, to note that she misstates Mr. Nichols' testimony that she purports to rebut here.
Okay, well, and that certainly is something you can address in your closing brief. And I did not mean to. I did not mean to imply in any way that because how she has described Mr. Nichols' testimony is in fact the way he would describe it. So certainly that is a point you can make in your argument. And as necessary, I said yesterday, I will allow you to have Mr. Nichols submit additional response testimony to this. So I think with both of those, you will have opportunities to make those points. So with that, Ms. Fry, you may continue.
okay. Thank you. Let's scroll on down, please. Okay, this is Spring 4. We've already been here, and Rosefield Notes said that Springs 2 and 3 streamed into 4. Okay, let's keep going down.
Okay, let's go ahead and move down. Next page, please.
Okay, here's Spring 7, and this lies easterly of the U.S. Forest Service Highway Spring. And the top right picture, you can see the channel of the pipeline. Let's go on down. And I think these bottom two pictures clearly show the channel that used to flow from Spring 7. Okay, keep going down.
All right, we'll move down.
Okay, and this is at the lower complex. This is right below 10, 11, 12, and right on the west branch of Strawberry Creek, right at above the confluence where it meets the east branch. And so you were there on day 2, right above here. And
Yeah, we did see flow in that part of the creek, even though there still was snow. I'm curious, Ms. Fry, how did you get there in 2017?
I hiked in from, it was about 5-mile hike in from the city creek off the 330, and then hiked upstream for like 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
Okay,
up the entire channel. So,
all right, I'll just say I'm sure there was a fair amount of bushwhacking involved, but anyway, you may.
Actually,
you don't have to spend any time on it. I'm glad you were able to get there.
Very clear. We can go on down. I think there's another picture.
Okay.
See, this is again the channel. That's their pipeline going over, but this is
so. And then just for location, this is what a short distance. Where is this?
This is sort of this is downstream below the east-west confluence of the branches coming through before you get up to where I was sitting.
Okay.
So this is okay. We'll go. And then, so okay, we're just going to stop here, and I have this at the end of 5. this is the pickup area at the off Waterman Canyon where all the water is piped and picked up. So I just want to make this point, like I did in 5. What Blue Triton has done is diverted through an artificial orifice, basically all the spring water from Strawberry Canyon that used to feed the creek, Strawberry Creek, and put that orifice in Waterman Canyon to be picked up and hauled away. Okay.
All right.
So
are we
that's
done with
that.
this exhibit
Yeah,
now?
we're done with that.
All right, Ms. Mullen, you go ahead and take down that exhibit. It's SOS 149. All right, so please proceed. Are there any other points you'd like to make in your summary?
Right. I'm just going to make a few from paragraph 5. And I've talked a lot about that 1905 map. Can I bring that up, FR 62?
Okay, you do discuss FR 62 in paragraph 5, so I will let you briefly summarize your points
I
about
just
that.
want to show a couple of things and then show one other point. Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead, Ms. Mullen, please post exhibit FR 62. This is a new exhibit for today, so it'll take just a moment for us to get it.
Okay. Let's
Okay.
scroll. Okay, so we've seen this map before. So let's scroll to the right-hand corner, please.
Okay. The upper right or the lower right?
Or upper right, excuse me, upper right.
Okay. This is a
can-
big megabyte exhibit, so it'll take a moment. But we'll make it a little bigger if we can.
Okay.
Okay, maybe one more click and we should be able to read it a little better. Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay. So this is a hydrological map of San Bernardino, Redlands, and vicinity. And it is made by W.C. Mendel Hall and J.P. Lippincott, right? And we see that the contours are at 50 feet. Accuracy was half a contour, so then 25 feet. Let's go to
Wait. Slow down, please.
Uh-huh.
Keep talking, but go slower so the court
Oh,
recorder.
I'm sorry. Okay, and we see that the contour intervals are 50 feet. Okay. And accuracy for USGS was half a contour, so 25 feet. Let's go to FR 60, please. Oh.
Okay, so does your written testimony discuss FR 60? Oh, here we are. I see
Yes.
it cited in footnote 5
15.
on page 4.
Yeah, 15. Yeah, 15.
Excuse me, footnote 15 on page 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have, wait, when I talk, let me talk before you start talking. So
Sure.
for the record, we have FR 60 posted on the screen now.
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay. So in the top paragraph, we see the name J.P. Lippincott. And it says he was the resident hydrographer of the United States Geological Survey. So he was in charge of mapping all the water. That's what a hydrographer does. They map all the water. Now, the first paragraph is about J.W. Toomey, who is representing the Forestry Division of the Department of Agriculture. And he's there to survey the mountains. and to examine the streams and the watershed. When we go back to that first paragraph, I mean, the top, can you scroll down a little bit, please? Thank you. So Mr. Toomey is touring the watershed, and it said afterwards, in company with J.P. Lippincott, who we saw made the 1905 map, the resident hydrographer of the United States Geological Survey, I will examine the Arrowhead watershed. All of the topographic maps and the streams, they were all done by visual physical observation. And here we see, if we can scroll down a little more, we have the date on this article. This article is from October 12th, 1899. Mr. Lippincott, who made the map, who was in charge of all the hydrography, mapping the hydrography for the USGS, was at the location of Arrowhead watershed, which includes Strawberry Creek. So I think it's very important to note that he was there. The maps were all based on physical observation. And he was also looking at the forest, which is Strawberry Creek. The headwaters are in the forest. And there's been question about if it's a perennial. He made observations that Strawberry Creek was a perennial stream as indicated on that map. So that's what I wanted to confirm. So I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory, or I've gone over it before.
Okay, well, and I appreciate your just hitting the high points, because I certainly can read all of it, and I have, and I will read it again. I can assure you, I'm going to read everything at least one more time. All right, so with that, does that complete your summary then of your survey?
I think everything else is, everybody can read. I just wanted to hit those 2 points. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. And I appreciate your sticking to a summary here. So with that, does anyone want to ask Ms. Fry any cross-examination questions? Hands, I don't see any electronic or real hands up, so I'm going to assume no. So we will go forward then. I don't have any other questions. I did have that one clarification question earlier. So we now have exhibits FR 152 through FR 161. I assume, Ms. Fry, you'd like to offer those into evidence?
Yes, I would like to offer 152 through 162, 161 into evidence.
Into evidence. And are there any objections to any of those exhibits being admitted into evidence? So Ms. Grady, please go ahead and state your objections.
Would you like me to go through just all of them as a list?
I think it's best to just go through them one at a time and state your objections to any you have objections to. Yes. Please go slowly too, so the court reporter can get it all down.
I will, and I'll stop after each one. So our first objection is to 152, and it's on the basis that this is simply a duplicate of SOS 275.
I'm sorry, there was a click there and I didn't hear. Please repeat what you just said.
FR 152 appears to be an exact duplicate of SOS 275.
Okay. Keep going. I will rule at the end, so please go ahead.
Fry, FR 153 appears to be an exact duplicate of SOS 276.
Okay.
FR 154 does not appear to be one document. It appears to have some additional pages from a different source. And it is, in any event, the beginning of it and what it's identified is as a duplicate. Oh, shoot, I apologize. I didn't note the page of what it duplicates, but it duplicates another SOS exhibit, and I can, if we take a break, give you the number. But it just adds a couple pages, which Ms. Fry does not explain or cite to in her testimony. So the purpose of adding this is unclear.
Okay.
FR 156 is a duplicate of SOS 273. FR 157 is not cited in the testimony, and there's no testimony regarding its source, though she may have noted that in her spreadsheet, so I will acknowledge that as possible, but it's not discussed in her testimony. So the relevance is unclear. 158, FR 158 is also not discussed or cited in her testimony. So the relevance, again, is it appears to be not relevant.
Okay.
And then she discussed the photos, so I no longer have an objection to 159.
All right, so let me go through these objections. So as I understand it, well, first of all, does anyone else have any objections? I don't see any other objections. So Ms. Grady, so as I understand it, for FR 152, 153, and 156, your sole objection is that they are duplicates of SOS exhibits. Is that correct?
That is my sole objection at this point, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to overrule those objections. I mean, I understand we normally don't like to burden a record with multiple exhibits that are the same document, but Ms. Fry has cited, she used her exhibit numbers to cite these exhibits in her testimony. So I think just from a clarity point of view, it's going to be easier to have those in. I don't think there's any inherent rule against having duplicate copies of this. Or let me try that again. I don't think there's any inherent rule against having two exhibits that are copies of the same document. And I don't see that there's any prejudice here, and I think the record will be clearer for that. So those objections are overruled. Now, FR 154, you had a different objection, and I do have some concerns about this document. And I don't know, Ms. Fry, if can you tell us where in your written testimony, FR 160, you discuss FR 154?
I'm going to tell you why I put 154 in. It is a duplicate of another part of its duplicate. I found the year of publication when I was at the Feldheim Library. I found that document. I didn't have the year of publication. And just a minute.
So I would like to know where it's discussed in your testimony, if at
I
all.
hope it was.
Now take your time. We've got time.
Right.
I'm looking, but I'm not seeing. So that's a concern.
I think it was mentioned yesterday. And in
Okay.
my testimony, I put that my testimony incorporates by reference slides and sur-rebuttal testimony submitted by Story of Stuff. And it documented that 1917 date of that publication.
All right. Hang on just a minute.
I think that's it. I'm just going to be honest. It's very difficult to try to do.
I certainly understand the complexities involved here.
Right, and it's just me here.
We've all been there.
One woman show.
Yeah. But I think Ms. Grady has a good point here about this. I don't know, Ms. Doty, if you can help us out. Has Ms. Fry referred to this document before? Please go ahead.
She has. FR 41 is I believe an excerpt. I'm not looking at it right now, but she mentions Arrowhead Springs Ideal Spa in her testimony that for Story of Stuff yesterday at footnote 44 and also 45 and 47.
Wait. Go, slow down a little bit here.
And I believe I've got to pull up FR 41 to see if it's similar.
I apologize. Did you say you're referring to SOS Exhibit 280?
I am.
Now that's what I'm trying to get here.
And which footnotes did you identify again?
47, 44, and 45. Those are all talking about G. Bailey Ideal Spa, which I believe is the same document. So that establishes the relevance. And Ms. Fry has just said this is a more complete copy, I believe, although I am trying to pull up FR.
Right. It has the date of the publication on it, and I thought we put that on the PowerPoint. Let me see.
Okay, I think what we're going to need to do is take a break here and look at this. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure how to go forward. I want to take a look at the cited docs here, which are FR 41 and 43, and see whether there's a difference here. I think we can figure out how to deal with that. So let's do. We'll do that in a minute. And then, what about FR 157 and 158? Are those cited in your testimony, Ms. Fry?
Okay, hang on just a minute. 158. Well, they were cited in Story of Stuff.
Yeah,
whether they.
I think they're in your authentication, but that may be it.
I did put them in my authentication, and I thought on that authentication that it was, I specified on that.
So just a general objection that I'd make is that quite a bit of BTB testimony came in as compilations of exhibits that were not authenticated at all. So for example, and we asked Mr. Lawrence about some he referenced, and he didn't even know the source of the documents. And in several cases, they were using newspaper articles that later came out had been found by Ms. Fry, but they didn't seem to know that. So I just asked that the same standard be applied to us.
Well, wait a second. If they offered something and you didn't object, that doesn't establish a rule for if you or Ms. Fry is now offering something and they do object. That's not. We still have to apply. Excuse me. We still have to apply the rules of evidence to each exhibit when there's an objection. So I'm sorry, but that's we don't sort of just suspend the rules in all cases because somebody didn't insist on our following them in one case.
Well, just for the record, we did object on that ground, and they came in.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't remember those details, but that certainly puts it in a little different light.
Yeah, and
for clarity, Mr. Lilly, these are two totally separate issues. Our issue here is that these documents are being proffered to be entered into record with no discussion about them whatsoever.
Okay.
Which is completely different than what Ms. Doty just.
All right. Well,
FR 157.
Wait.
Okay.
Just please let me call on you one at a time, or the court reporter is going to really get upset.
Okay, sorry.
She doesn't like it when more than one person talks at the same time because she can't take it all down. So let me just try to get a little control over this discussion. I'll tell you the problem I have with FR 154 is I'm not sure it's been authenticated, particularly it looks like the last 2 pages may be something else, may not be excerpts from the same document. So let's start with that. Ms. Fry, do you have FR 154 handy?
Yes.
Okay, so I see there's what looks like a cover, and then there's a title page, and then there's the beginning, the foreword, which has the date of 1917, and then there's excerpts from certain pages, chapter 8. But then what are the last 2 pages? They look like something totally different.
Those are the back of the book. This was an advertisement done, sort of an advertising pamphlet, and I have part of it in evidence already, but what I didn't have was the date of publication, which is page 4, and it says 1917.
Okay.
And so that's why I put this in, because then we have a date on this document, which is, just a minute, which is FR 41. That's already in evidence, but I thought it was important to get that date.
Okay, so stop right there. We'll see whether you can all get these things faster electronically than I can get them in paper. I'm using paper. So I'm looking at FR 41 now. So FR 41 just had the title page and page 40, it's like 46. So you've now added some other pages. I don't know if 46 is included, and there are a couple of other pages. And you're telling me that the last 2 pages are in fact from this same document. Is that correct?
They are. They're the back pages, right? The back cover.
Okay, so with that, and I'm trying to remember, is FR 154 discussed in your testimony?
Well, it was discussed yesterday, and about Coldwater Canyon.
I
believe it is on her slides from yesterday, but I will check.
Okay.
She cited FR 41 in her testimony on behalf of Story of Stuff.
This is a little confusing.
I'm sorry.
It is.
All right. Well, anyway, we do have, and with everything Ms. Fry has just said is under oath. So we do have authentication of FR 154 and an explanation of why she is submitting it. So I admit, Ms. Grady, this is a little hard for you and me to follow because some of this came in as SOS exhibits and some is coming in now as Fry exhibits. But I think she has established certainly authentication and an accurate description of this and why she is submitting this. So based on that, do you still have an objection to FR 154?
My objection stands. You may overrule it. That's your decision.
Okay, well, so please state now why don't you restate your objection based on this lengthy discussion we've just had?
This appears to, in part, duplicate FR 41. It is a series of photographs of pages that do not appear to come from one document. And Ms. Fry offers no testimony anywhere that cites to a document identified as FR 154.
Okay. So on that basis, the objection is overruled and I will admit the exhibit into evidence. I think she has testified just now. And as I say, I do have discretion to allow some leeway beyond the written testimony as necessary for explaining exhibits. And I think she's explained that these are in fact all excerpts from one document, and she has explained why she has submitted that. So I'm going to allow FR 154 into evidence. So let's go forward. I think the only remaining objections that I've not ruled on are FR 157 and FR 158. So let's take those. And let me just check. I do not believe that, Ms. Fry, that you have discussed those exhibits at all in your testimony. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
All right,
On
let's start 150.
157 on
Yes.
page 4 is cited in footnote 11.
Okay. All right, so it is discussed, and I know your authentication spreadsheet also authenticates this. So it's, I mean, it's a long manual and you're citing to one page in it. But with that explanation, so Ms. Grady, do you still object to FR 157?
I will withdraw that objection.
Okay, so we will admit FR 157 into evidence. All right, so now FR 158, Ms. Fry, where is that discussed in your testimony?
That was, I believe, yesterday. I'm sorry, just. And I need to look at the story of stuff exhibits list again to see which number
Yeah, I'm not seeing
it was
any
in there.
citation to FR 158 in either of your testimonies.
Well, it was under probably story of stuff. I know that it's in an SOS exhibit in here. Oh, it's right. SOS 274 PowerPoint 14.
Hang on a second. SOS 274?
Mm-hmm. That's what it says in the footnote here.
Oh, okay. What footnote are you looking at?
I'm looking at my sur-rebuttal testimony for story of stuff on page 7, and I'm looking at footnote 48, the second part of that footnote.
So
Okay.
SOS exhibit 280.
274.
Wait. Hang on. So I'm looking at SOS 280, which is Ms. Fry's sur-rebuttal testimony on page 7 in paragraph.
Footnote, let's see, footnote 48.
So paragraph 24 cites
20.
to,
Mm-hmm.
in footnote 48 cites, see also SOS 274.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the PowerPoint.
SOS 274 is an excerpt from the state meteorologist report. And then the entire report is now is now FR 158. Do we have this correct now?
Right.
Okay, so SOS 274 is an excerpt, which was about 4 or 5 pages, and FR 158 is the entire report, which is several hundred pages. So I'll start with you, Ms. Freiser. Is there any reason why we need to have FR 158 into evidence, the entire report? I mean, I briefly went through it. It talks about geologic conditions features throughout the state of California. It's in some ways interesting, but I'm not sure it's extremely relevant to our proceedings. So it's basically covers the entire state, county by county, where SOS 274 has the excerpts that seem to concern the area we're interested in this matter. So is there any reason why you are offering the entire exhibit FR 158?
Well, you have the entire source of that document, so.
Okay. I don't know, Ms. Grady, do you have a comment on that now that we have a better context for this?
I just don't, I would just say I don't see how it's relevant, and it doesn't align with any testimony in the record. So I don't see the basis for including it other than confuse the record further than it already is.
All right, so I am going to sustain the objection to FR 158. I agree with Ms. Grady. Since this one is not cited anywhere, we don't need it in for duplication the way some of the others are allowed in for duplicates where they're cited. I don't see that we need the entire several hundred page document. I can't imagine, well, who knows, but I haven't seen any arguments that anyone is going to want to cite to the discussions of the mineral resources in other parts of California. So FR 158 is not accepted into evidence. The other exhibits, FR 152 through 161, are accepted into evidence, and the objections to those are overruled. So I think that takes care of the FR exhibits. Is there anything else that we need to talk about those exhibits? Okay, not hearing anything else, we may wrap up earlier today than expected. We are set for Center for Biological Diversity's witness at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I did agree with Ms. Belenke that we would do that. I mean, it's always hard to figure out exactly how the schedule is going to go. This went faster today than I anticipated. I'm sorry that we have to have this gap, although knowing all of you, I'm sure you have plenty of other things to do with your time between now and then. So are there any other comments or anything we need to cover? Otherwise, we're going to come back at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I'll just say, Ms. Doty, I know it's hard to get all these exhibits put together on short notice, but if you ever do this again, please try to coordinate with your witnesses so that they just submit their testimony once, either for your client or individually, but not both. I mean, I understand this was done on short notice, and that's probably why it happened this way. But it does create some confusion, and it makes it a little more burdensome. I don't think anybody's violated any of the rules of evidence, but it just has been a little burdensome this way. So I don't know, Ms. Fry, your hand is up. I must have caused something that you want to respond to. Go ahead.
I do want to respond. I believe that as a public member, since this is a hearing that the public can participate, I served as a witness for Story of Stuff, but I'm also representing myself as a member of the public. And maybe not everything that Story of Stuff wanted me to say would come under that, but why should my freedoms and rights to free speech and right to participate be eliminated or limited because I served as a witness for someone else. So
Okay,
that's what I'd
well-
like to say on that point. Thank you.
Well, and I have not limited your rights of free speech. I have allowed you
Right.
to testify.
Right.
That's one of the reasons. And as I said early on, the State Water Board encourages or, and wants to facilitate members of the public, not just organizations with sophisticated attorneys, but wants to encourage members of the public to participate. And I have appreciated your contributions, Ms. Fry and Mr. Lowe's and Mr. Bilecki's. So we allow that. All I was saying was just logistically, it becomes a little confusing. But that's why I have allowed you and Mr. Lowe to submit your separate testimony beyond what Story of Stuff did. So let's just leave it at that. It's just
It's very difficult. Yeah.
well, the rules of evidence and procedure are complicated. I've been doing this for well over 30 years. I won't say how many over 30 years, and I'm still learning. So I went to law school before I started this. So I can understand where with people who don't have that education and background, this could be confusing. But I think everybody has done well. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. I do appreciate the fact that everyone's been civil to one another. I know there are some major disagreements on the critical issues in this case, and I appreciate the fact that everyone has been able to conduct himself or herself professionally despite those disagreements. So thank you all very much for that. So with that, I think we've waded through the exhibits. I think we've covered everything except for Center for Biological Diversity, which can start tomorrow at 10. And while we have a little time this morning, I do want to go ahead and talk about the next phase, just to save us a little time tomorrow. I think I advised you all that I calendared this to start on May 23rd. Is that correct? I think that was in my last notice. And I said we would have that hearing date if necessary. I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are. You can be thinking about this, and if any of you want to discuss this tomorrow after we're done with Center for Biological Diversity's evidence, we can do that. I do believe that several witnesses rebutted or claimed they were rebutting the testimony of Mr. Nichols, and I told the Blue Triton attorneys yesterday that I would allow Mr. Nichols to submit. I think technically it would be sur-rebuttal. We'll just call it responsive testimony that just responds to those specific points. And I will ask that it state the witness's testimony in this phase, in the sur-rebuttal phase, and then the response. Organized, frankly, similar to the way Mr. Lowe organized his rebuttal testimony. Point, response, point, response. I think a maximum of 10 pages, double-spaced, will be sufficient for that. Ms. Grady and Mr. Sanders, you can talk to Mr. Nichols about that and let me know tomorrow if you think a 10-page limitation is appropriate. I don't want this to go on forever. I think he can do that and wrap it up. I did say I would do that. I think that is a lot more efficient than trying to extract fixed points through cross-examination, and I appreciate Blue Triton's attorneys basically agreeing to that approach or accepting that approach. So the only rebuttal testimony or sur-rebuttal testimony that came in from Blue Triton was very limited response or testimony from Mr. Nichols about the mapping. I don't think that's necessarily a critical point for this hearing. I mean, it's important, and I'm not trying to diminish that, but I don't think it is going to be necessary to have any rebuttal, or that I should allow any rebuttal to that. So that's my inclination. I do want to try to close the loop here, but I see Ms. Fry, I've probably once again gotten stimulated you to want to make a comment. So please go ahead and make your comment.
Right. So I've had extensive discussions with USGS historic experts maps, and I'm married to a cartographer. it just, there were many errors made, and I didn't have time to bring in a witness before, because frankly, we didn't have much time. By the time I talked to him, reviewed that, it was limited. So I don't know. I think if you're offering them an opportunity to have sur-rebuttal, and if we're going to use those maps and that exhibit, then I think perhaps we need to consider having a true expert or be able to discuss those.
So that would, as I understand it, this witness, well, let me ask you, would this witness just be responding to the testimony Mr. Nichols has offered in this round of the hearing, or would you want to go beyond that?
Well, those maps, I don't know. Can I have a moment for discuss?
Well, I'll
something?
tell you
2
what,
minutes?
why don't you think about it, and you can have 24 hours. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Miss Gray, your
Okay.
hand was up. Now it's not up. You don't want to say anything more. Okay. All right. I'm trying to be fairly candid about this. I mean, we can go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth forever. Maybe not, but for a long time. And number one, it takes up a lot of time. Number two, at some point, it really has diminishing returns on the value for the proceeding. So I don't want to do that. But on the other hand, I hear you sincerely saying, Ms. Fry, that you have a witness who you think may want to offer some response to what Mr. Nichols has testified to. And I am hesitant to deny you that responsibility. So something else you want to say?
Well, it gets into how tangential all these issues are. I mean, that's sort of when you're working on this sur-rebuttal, I mean, where do you go? I mean, and
Right.
So, but there were things that were frankly wrong. And
Okay.
I couldn't, and I'm not, and you know, I don't know how much weight that makes in the case and how much effort, you know, to put in on that.
Well,
But
and
I don't
unfortunately,
know.
I don't either. I haven't started trying to write a proposed order, and I don't have a good feeling for how important the mapping is going to be. I mean, certainly the historical information is relevant to this.
But it's
proceeding.
very valuable, and I think, you know, there's been some misrepresentation, and I
Okay.
don't know. That's all I'm going to say. I've tried to stick on subject and, you know, keep on what our points are, but I don't.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about this more tomorrow. Well, I'm going to hear from Miss Grady, who's put her hand back up, and then I'll tell you what I want, what the homework assignment is for tomorrow. So, Miss Grady, please go ahead.
And I'll just add that I am concerned a bit by Ms. Fry's impromptu statements as being kind of beyond the scope of discussion when she's expressing her opinion about testimony in this forum in the nature that we're set up right now. But second.
Okay, stop. So let me clarify. When she makes arguments like that, I do not consider that to be testimony, even though she's under oath. So these are now arguments, not testimony. Just
thank you.
If that allays some of your concerns, but go ahead.
Thank you for clarifying the record on that point. The second issue is just as a reminder that Blue Triton Brands is the respondent in this proceeding and the subject of state action. And although I appreciate the public participants' concerns about opportunity to share all of the information that they would like to share, the laws provide different guarantees for those who are about to have or who are the subject of state action. And that requires that any new evidence brought against Blue Triton that would support state action depriving Blue Triton, a citizen of the state of California, from any possessory rights to water to have the opportunity to rebut. And so I would just like to suggest that if Ms. Fry is going to add a new witness, a new testimony into evidence, that we would then request an additional phase after that to respond.
Okay, well, I understand your position on that. Let me just ask, is anybody else contemplate wanting to offer any additional evidence for this hearing? All right, so let's do this. After we complete the Center for Biological Diversity's presentation tomorrow morning, I will ask for further comments, basically offers. Ms. Grady, first of all, tell me whether then, you don't have to tell me now, but then whether or not you're going to want to have Mr. Nichols offer additional testimony. And if so, I mean, again, it really does have to be limited to responding to what other parties have offered in this phase, and I think you understand that. And whether you're going to agree to or have any objection to a 10-page limit for that. And then, Ms. Fry, I want you to work with or discuss with your expert whether or not it's necessary to respond to what Mr. Nichols has offered in this round of the hearings. I think that really is all I'm going to potentially allow. I'm not going to allow more than that. And if so, I'm going to put a page limit on that, and it's going to be on the order of 5 pages. I think that is plenty, and that would be for testimony. I don't know whether there need to be other exhibits. I would hope there would not need to be very many. So why don't you talk to him or her about that, and just tell me tomorrow what you are proposing as far as pages for testimony and numbers of other exhibits, if any. And I will then decide whether or not to allow that. And I may decide to allow you to submit it, and then we will decide whether or not to admit it after we have seen it. So let's go forward with that. We also are going to have to talk tomorrow about a deadline. I don't think I have previously submitted a deadline for when this additional rebuttal testimony will be due. So we'll have to figure out that. My inclination is to have it be approximately May 9th, which would be 2 weeks before the hearing starts on the 23rd. But I will be glad to hear from people about that. I mean, again, I don't think we're talking very long here. And certainly for Mr. Nichols, he knows the facts and the issues in this case very well by this point. So it's not like he's starting from scratch. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Let's have further discussion tomorrow. I did want to alert you to this so you could be thinking about this, and we can have a more informed discussion tomorrow. And with that, is there anything else that anybody would like to discuss today? All right. Hearing nothing more, we will reconvene at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I did agree to Ms. Belenke's request that we start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So is there anything else for today? All right. Hearing none, thank you all very much. And I will see you all at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Goodbye.